right, guys. So one of those things where I told you I had to sit for a little bit and think about how I'm gonna film the things. This is that time, right? We're gonna talk about a technically high compression K20A3. All right, some of y'all may remember a couple of years ago. I think a couple of years ago at this point. I'm pretty sure it was 2018. I was talking about, I built a K20A3 block with K20A2 rotating assembly. Now, normally what I talk about a lot for the K20A3 in high compression is just a piston swap. Like, you still have the base model rotating assembly, just the pistons added. It still gets you pretty much the same results as if you were going to go the whole rotating assembly route. Now, of course, the difference being your RPM can safely, go up. Although I don't think it's going to be much difference from where the A3 limits are versus the A2 limits are for redline. And then there's the other thing is that if you do have the full rotating assembly of the A2, you have the benefit of being able to send it to the fucking moon for power, because we know those things regularly hold 500 horsepower, and more coming on that hopefully later today. So Nathan's build here is a K20A2 rotating assembly in an A3 block with a base model head that has been poured and polished, and I believe the valve train is also modified as well, and he's got aftermarket cams in there. So he got tuned by Javi. Now, Javi is a great guy. He's an awesome dude from my interaction with him, and he's a very good tuner. But from all the tuners that I know down here that I hear talked about the most, Javi is the guy that tends to focus on making the most power you can while retaining good drivability and safety. So he's not a dude, and I'm not trying to misrepresent, but from what I'm hearing from everybody, he's the kind of guy that you go to if you want to maintain longevity but still make performance. So with that being said, Javi's not the guy that pushes the limits on power. All right, and Nathan, from what he said, was also very happy with the setup. He wants to maintain drivability as much as possible, but he did hit me up to ask if there's anything more we can get out of his, for horsepower-wise, from his engine, right? So he's tuned on pump gas, and redline set at 82, and he's got full bolt-ons. All right, and I would imagine that I put some in the beginning of the video, the pictures and whatnot. So it's an expensive build, and he made 190 wheel horsepower. So, I felt the need to talk about this, of course, because I've talked about the piston swap combination for the A3 build for a long time. And I have said before in the past that piston swap full bolt-ons should net you 200 wheel horsepower. Now, there are a whole bunch of factors that it comes in tuning, right? There's a whole bunch of different things to look at. So, even on any given day, your car can roll in the dyno and make this power level, and you go to another dyno or even the same dyno and make a little less, shit like that happens. It does happen. All right. So I kind of feel good about the situation, thinking 190 wheel horsepower, that's 10 off of the mark what I expected. I've always expected at least 200 wheel horsepower, and that's because I've talked to guys in the past who have done the full bolt-on route for the K20A3 and made decent power. Talked to a guy years ago back that fucking made 176 wheel horsepower, and I went and reviewed the video to make sure he made 176 wheel horsepower. I saw the dyno graph from his full bolt-ons, stock rotating assembly, stock head A3. So the potential there to make more power, it should be there, right? Full bolt-on rounds is definitely not the way to make the most power in A. And out of the K series, we know that K can make all kinds of power in A. And even for those guys that want to argue that the base model is complete horse shit and can't make anything, that's not necessarily the case. And remember, again, things change in tuning and all kinds of different things. Right? There's all kinds of different things, factors there. So, the guy made 176 on full bolt-ons. This guy made 190 wheel horsepower. There's a 14 wheel horsepower difference. So, for the fact that the guy has a pretty much fully built head. Yeah, it's a fully built head. It's poured and polished, valve train and cams, a fully built A3 head, and he only made extra 14 wheel horsepower. And on top of that, too, the fact that he has a higher compression kind of throws me for a bit of a loop there. That's a conundrum for me. I'm definitely wondering what the hell happened there. I mean, like, I'm not too surprised from the 190 wheel horsepower, but at the same time I am, because the 190 wheel horsepower should have been doable even with the stock head. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. But also, I guess to come back to talk about this, if the car had been 285, then 200 definitely should have been a thing there. But I'm still a bit surprised on the numbers being a little bit short there. But this is one of those things where you gotta like temper expectations. Like Kyle recently did his VTEC Killer only bolt-ons, or VTEC Killer bolt-ons stock block K24 base model and made 210. And I think that's outstanding. So I am a little bit surprised again by the low numbers for the K20A2, or what's virtually a K20A2 with a base model head. Now, again, if you wanna boost this thing, then that's not a bad idea to go ahead and do that and just leave the stock base model head on there. It was a plan of mine for a while, and I bailed on it because the car wound up getting traded out. But I think the K20A2 is still a viable option, right? And even with the base model head, I would expect more out of this. I don't know what happened here, why we had a little bit of a shortcoming, but I don't see why this isn't a 200 horsepower block, or 200 horsepower engine. I still think that even using the base model rotating assembly minus the pistons isn't a bad idea. So the other options, I guess, to kind of expand on what he has here to really make the most out of it would be to get even higher compression pistons, because we have the RRC pistons out there are available for the K20 now from Nippon Racing, and that's 11.8 compression compared to the 11. Okay, so here, let me stop right there for a second. So he would have had 11.5 compression with that setup had he not poured and polished it. With poured and polish it, drops it down a bit. I don't know how much, but maybe 11 or under, even maybe like 10 something compression. But of course, you're losing on compression, but you're gaining on airflow, so it should make up the difference anyway. But if you go with the RRC pistons in the K20, that's 11.8 to 1 compression compared to what the A2 pistons or even the basic type are provide. So that's one option to bump up in compression even a little bit more. And then the last thing to throw on there is like if you really want to squeeze the most out of the K20 and you're doing like a base model option, is to go the VTEC Killer route. The VTEC Killer route clearly has more cam lift than even the aftermarket performance shit that you can get for the K20 base head, and it's not too expensive to find. I mean, like if you look for cams and then you do your own grind work for the VTEC Killer, it's not a super expensive route to go down. It's definitely going to save you money as opposed to the aftermarket performance shit that you're going to find. And I would say you could probably get away with using the stock valve train as long as you're not fucking revving out to the moon. I still think that even with the increased lift, that you could probably still do 8,000 all day and not really be that big of an issue. So again, if you're gonna do the K20 route, just temper expectations unless you're really trying to get into it. Like if you're really trying to go like balls out. If you're trying to make more power on the A3 but maintain drivability in A, it's just not really there. Like with the way swap prices are going nowadays, you can almost do a budget K swap that's going to be, depending on what you're doing it in, you can do a K that's for almost as good as a B series. So for price wise. So if you're going into if you're doing it in an EG where you can keep the subframe stock and you're going to buy knockoff mounts and all that shit, you can keep the K20A3 as a super budget friendly thing, and you can just do that and do a little bit of shit to it to make it still worthwhile over a B series, because torque is going to be higher and horsepower isn't extremely hard to match or beat. Because I mean, considering that like the top rated B series, for a mild build is like around 200 horsepower, so still a viable thing to do. But I think that if you're really going to do the K20, the K20 is not a dead engine, man. I know everybody likes to go straight to K24 and forget about the K20. There are reasons I've talked about in the past about keeping the K20. That's a good thing. But you just really have to dig into it. And if you're not going to do a head swap, then you got to go the VTEC Killer route if you're going to try and make any kind of power off that head. So I know this is kind of rambly, but this is something we've talked about that I've had a lot of people ask me about. Like, this is some old videos I did from the build way back in the day, and people comment on it. So like, whatever happened to this engine? Well, I had one other guy, Kenneth that was waiting to do this build. He kind of did it, and then something happened, and he had needed to go back. It didn't make the power it was supposed to. They weren't finished with the tune or whatnot. So I guess whenever Kenneth gets to it, gets his shit finished, we can review this again and talk about it again to see exactly where his power levels are going to be at. And then we can have a couple of dynographs to go off of that's going to maybe show like more of a median of what we can expect. Of course, what we really need is a whole bunch of people doing this. We need like a dozen people or more, and then we can have a much better picture across different tuners, different areas, and all whatnot to see what to expect. But unfortunately, most people just avoid this kind of build completely, and we just don't see it too often, and that's why it's hard to find clear data. Same thing with the VTech killer shit. For the longest time, it's been hard to find clear data because some of the people are throwing out numbers on here. It seems to be a bit of a lie. I'm sorry, but and again, the K24 situation kind of verifies that for me, because there's a lot of people that were saying bolt-ons VTech killer on a stock K20 block we're making 220 horsepower, and I just don't see that. Even though I haven't been able to fucking isolate and test that shit for myself, just based on the other things I've seen around it, it makes it hard to believe for me that a 961 compression block with bolt-ons and VTech killer makes 220 versus a K24 with more displacement and VTech killer making the 210, and also this, pretty much fully built K20A3 coming up at 190. So we got a median range area, 210, 220, 180 to 190. So in that area, unless you're going to go balls out on your K20. I'm not trying to discourage people. As a matter of fact, I want more people to do this. Just know that if you're going to if you're going to open your engine up and dig into it to build, and you don't want to be disappointed, got to make sure you go hard. Don't go medium, because if you go medium, you're going to wind up with numbers that aren't going to satisfy you. And especially if you're not doing the work, you're going to be pissed off because you spend a lot of money for it. And if you are doing the work, you still spend some money and a lot of time and labor to get those low numbers. So just make sure you plan out your shit properly. Know what you're, have a number goal that you want and build towards that goal. Don't just build willy-nilly and hope for something big. Have a specific number goal that you want. Build specifically for that. All right, guys, that's it for this one. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and peace. One more thing I forgot. Got carried away in the talking. But Nathan's IG information should be in the description below. His Instagram isn't correlated. It's not at all, but it's public, so you can go talk to him and send DMs if you want to ask him directly or whatnot, what's going on. All right, guys, again, thanks for watching, and peace.